My name is Barbara Thurman. I'm 31 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've only ever truly splurged on one thing in my life: my 2019 Corvette Stingray. Midnight blue, spotless, low mileage, something I saved for over 5 years to finally afford. That car wasn't just a car. It was the proof that I could build something on my own. It was the one thing I never compromised on, never loaned out, never risked. Not for anyone. Not even for the man I thought I was building a future with. His name is Adrian, 29, charming, affectionate in all the ways that matter in the beginning. We met at a friend's rooftop barbecue 8 months ago. Warm lights, jazz music, and the kind of easy conversation that makes you believe in coincidences. 4 months later, he moved into my condo. I didn't think twice. He paid me $600 toward utilities. I covered the mortgage. Fair, simple adult. Or so I thought. Looking back, I see the red flags now. The impulsive streak, the sense of entitlement, the way he admired my Corvette just a little too much. But on that Thursday afternoon, I wasn't thinking about red flags. I was in the middle of a presentation at work, standing in front of a conference room of clients trying to maintain composure as my phone buzzed again and again in my blazer pocket. I ignored it. I finished the pitch. I walked out of the room at 2:47 p.m. 6 messages, all from Adrian, all within 12 minutes. 2:36 p.m. Babe, I'm taking the vet to meet Jenna for lunch. Hope that's okay. My stomach dropped. He had never not once asked to drive my Corvette. He had his own car, a perfectly functional 2016 Honda Accord. There was no reason to take mine. None. 2:39 p.m. This car is insane, Barbara. Oh my God. 2:40 p.m. Why don't you let me drive this more often, Lowell? My heart started pounding. Hard. I felt the edges of the world press in. 2:43 p.m. Babe, call me. 2:45 p.m. Call me now. 2:48 p.m. I wrecked the Corvette. Cops are here. Tell them it was stolen. Please. My license is suspended. I can't get in trouble. Please, babe. My fingers went numb. My breath caught in my throat. I read that last message 3 times. Suspended license since when? I stepped into an empty hallway, hit call. Adrian answered before the first ring finished. Barbara, thank God. Listen. Okay, there was this truck, and I swerved and I hit a pole, but it's not that bad. The officer is asking for my license, but I can't. Adrian, my voice cracked. Your license is suspended. Yes, but that's not look. I need you to tell them someone stole the car. If they find out I was driving with a suspended license, I'm going to jail. Please, I'm begging you. Where are you? The intersection near the mall by Starbucks. Hurry. Please tell them it was stolen. He hung up. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys, muttered something to my boss about an emergency, and ran to my truck. The drive took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of questions I wasn't ready to answer. Why did he take my car? Why lie about his license? Why choose me to drag into this? And the one question that ached more than I wanted to admit, how long has he been hiding things from me? Then I saw it. My Corvette, my beautiful, perfect Corvette. The front end was crushed around a steel pole. The hood folded like paper. Fluids dripping. The midnight blue paint scraped open like a wound. My hands tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. 2 cop cars, a crowd forming, and Adrian standing there in a nice outfit, hairstyled, trying to look innocent, while mascara-streaked panic painted his face. When the officer approached me, something inside me detached. A quiet, cold part of me rose up, the part that had worked 3 jobs to save for that car. You the owner of the Corvette? The officer asked. Yes, I said, I am. And this man, the officer gestured toward Adrian, my boyfriend. He says he had permission to drive it. I looked at Adrian, his eyes widened, begging silently. I turned back to the officer. He did not. Adrian's face drained of color. He took the car without my knowledge or permission, I continued. And I have proof. I pulled out my phone, opened my home security camera, showed the footage time-stamped 2:31 p.m. of Adrian going through my nightstand, taking the Corvette keys, and leaving. Then I showed the officer the texts, including the one begging me to lie to police. The officer's expression changed instantly. Ma'am, he said to Adrian, please step over here. No, Barbara, what are you doing? The officer's partner stepped in. Sir, your license is suspended. You are under arrest for unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and attempting to flee the scene. Flee what? Adrian shrieked. The car wouldn't start. Barbara, stop them. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I stood there, numb, cold, empty. He had screamed at me when I wouldn't lie. He tried to make me complicit in a felony. He destroyed the one thing I worked half my life to achieve. I felt nothing. They cuffed him. He screamed my name as they put him into the back of the patrol car. His voice cracked. His eyes were wild. It didn't move me. By the time I got home around 7 p.m., the silence of my apartment felt foreign. Adrian's clothes were in my closet, his toiletries in my bathroom, his shoes by my door. I grabbed trash bags. Every last piece of him went in. And as I tied the first bag shut, a thought whispered through my head. If he could take my car, what else was he capable of taking? The morning after Adrian was arrested, I woke to the vibration of my phone on the nightstand. For a split second, I thought it might be him calling from jail, begging again, screaming again, lying again. But the caller ID made my stomach harden. Diane Fletcher, his mother. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Her voice came through like a siren. How dare you leave my son in jail overnight? What kind of woman are you, Barbara? I held the phone away from my ear. Diane, your son stole my car. He made a mistake. He was scared. Any loving girlfriend would help him. He drove with a suspended license, I replied. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. You're ruining his life. No, I said quietly. He ruined mine. Or at least he tried. I hung up, blocked her. For a moment, I stood in the middle of my kitchen in complete silence, feeling something unfamiliar rise in my chest, a mix of sorrow, fury, and the dawning realization that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Adrian made bail at 10 a.m. I didn't know that yet, only learned later that Diane had posted $5,000 to get him out. I was at my desk halfway through an email when someone began pounding on my condo door like they were trying to break it down. Barbara. Open the door. We need to talk. I didn't move. Barbara, I know you're inside. I spoke through the door voice steady. Your things are in bags. I'll leave them outside. You're not coming in. You can't just kick me out. I live here. You're not on the lease. You're not on the mortgage. You were never a legal tenant. This is illegal. No, actually, I said. I checked with a lawyer this morning. That silence tight stun told me I'd finally said something he didn't know how to manipulate. But it didn't last long. Adrian's voice softened into a pathetic tremble. Baby, please, I'm scared. I made a bad choice. I'll pay for the car. With what I asked. Your part-time income. You barely make $1,000 a month. The damages alone are over $40,000. Silence again. Your stuff will be outside in 1 hour. He tried another angle, tears this time, guilt, desperation. Barbara, where am I supposed to go? I closed my eyes for a second, just one, because hearing his voice still hurt. You should have thought about that before stealing my car and trying to get me to commit a felony. His tone flipped instantly. You're being cruel. You're heartless after everything I've done for you. We've been together 8 months, I said, and you destroyed the thing I worked years for. What exactly do you think you've done for me? No answer. He left. Came back an hour later with his sister Kennedy, who glared at me like I'd personally set fire to her childhood home. Adrian grabbed his stuff while I recorded the whole thing on my phone just in case. They left without another word. But I knew Adrian wasn't done. He never admitted fault, never accepted consequences. In his mind, everything always happened to him, never because of him. 3 days later, the insurance adjuster called. Ms. Thurman, we've completed the assessment on your Corvette. I already knew what she would say. The vehicle is a total loss. We can offer $47,200 after deductible. My throat tightened, but I forced calm into my voice. And who's liable for the wreck? The adjuster sighed. Well, since Adrian wasn't authorized to drive the vehicle and his license was suspended, the claim will be pursued against him personally. We'll send the civil action paperwork this afternoon. I swallowed harshly. Thank you. She hesitated. Ms. Thurman, this is going to get very messy. I almost laughed. It already has. The next morning, the building management called. Ms. Thurman, we received an anonymous complaint that you illegally evicted a resident from your unit. I closed my eyes. Adrian, let me explain, I said, and I did. I forwarded the police report, the security footage screenshots, and the texts. 1 hour later, the office emailed back. Thank you for the clarification. The complaint has been dismissed. Strike one for Adrian. The day after that, I received an Instagram message request from an unfamiliar account. I opened it. It was 3 paragraphs of insults from Diane, calling me a narcissist and abuser, and claiming I manipulated her sweet boy into driving the Corvette so I could frame him. I stared at the message, then slowly took a screenshot, saved it, and blocked her. Strike 2. On Thursday, things escalated. An email hit my company inbox from an anonymous sender. Subject: concern about employee behavior. Message: I fear Barbara Thurman may be a danger to herself and others. She has exhibited violent tendencies toward her partner and recently caused him to be arrested. My HR director called me in. I brought the police report, the security footage, and the texts again. After 10 minutes, my boss sighed. Barbara, someone is trying to sabotage your job. We're dismissing the complaint. If anything else happens, come straight to me. As I walked out of the HR office, something inside me hardened like cooling steel. Adrian wanted to destroy me because I wouldn't lie for him. He wanted to punish me for refusing to be his shield against consequences. And for the first time since the crash, I felt something sharper than heartbreak. Rage. Then, just as I was settling into the idea that things couldn't escalate further, a white envelope appeared in my mailbox. Notice of court hearing. Defendant Adrian Fletcher. My breath slowed. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger and far uglier. The courthouse parking lot smelled like wet asphalt and tension. I arrived early, maybe too early, because the idea of walking in at the same time as Adrian made my stomach twist. I sat in my car for a moment, breathing through the last remnants of panic. This wasn't just another errand. This was the day the truth finally went on record. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, and the hallway benches were filled with people trying to make themselves look smaller than their circumstances. I found an empty seat and waited until I felt a shift in the air. I looked up. There he was, Adrian, dressed in a too-tight suit jacket, hair styled like he was auditioning for sympathy, standing beside his mother Diane and a young public defender who couldn't have been more than 24. Diane shot me a look like I had stabbed her only son in broad daylight. Adrian saw me and instantly started crying, loud, messy, theatrical. Barbara, he whispered, voice trembling. Please, can we talk before this starts? I didn't move. I didn't even blink. The public defender placed a hand on Adrian's arm. Mr. Fletcher, remember no contact. He glared at her, then at me, his tears drying into brittle rage. We were called into the courtroom at 9:12 a.m. The judge, an exhausted-looking woman in her late 50s, sat behind the bench with the kind of expression that said she had absolutely no patience left for anyone's nonsense. Perfect, I thought. The clerk read the charges: driving with a suspended license, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, attempting to flee the scene. When asked for a plea, Adrian's voice cracked. Not guilty, Your Honor. Diane nodded proudly from the audience seating as though her son had just solved world hunger. The prosecutor stood adjusting a stack of printed evidence. Your Honor, the state has substantial documentation refuting the defendant's claim. We have the victim, Ms. Barbara Thurman, here today. My heart hammered in my chest as the judge gestured to me. Ms. Thurman, approach. I walked to the witness stand and raised my right hand for the oath. My palms were sweating, but my voice didn't shake. The prosecutor began gently. Ms. Thurman, did you give Mr. Fletcher permission to drive your vehicle on the date in question? No, I said clearly, I did not. And do you have evidence to support your claim? Yes. He had me describe the home security footage, Adrian slipping into my bedroom, rifling through my nightstand, and leaving with my keys. Then the text him taking the car, bragging about it, panicking, and begging me to lie to police. Every message was displayed on monitors in the courtroom. The judge leaned forward as she read the message. Tell them it was stolen, please. My license is suspended. Her eyebrow lifted, slowly. Mr. Fletcher, the judge said, did you ask Ms. Thurman for permission before taking her vehicle? Adrian swallowed so hard his throat clicked. I thought she wouldn't mind, before the judge repeated sharply. Not hypothetically, she probably wouldn't mind. Did you or did you not ask? Adrian's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at me silently, pleading. I stared back, expression empty. He finally whispered, no, Your Honor. And your license was suspended at the time? Yes, but... No buts, the judge snapped. Driving with a suspended license is not a misunderstanding. It is a deliberate violation. Diane sprang to her feet. Your Honor, my son is a good man. Sit down, the judge barked without looking at her. Diane sat. Hard. The prosecutor continued describing witness statements from the crash scene, how Adrian tried to restart the Corvette to drive away. The courtroom murmured, every whispered breath a confirmation. Then Adrian's public defender stood and attempted to salvage what little credibility he had left. Your Honor, my client believed he had implied permission based on the nature of their relationship. The judge held up a hand. Are you seriously suggesting that dating someone grants you automatic access to their property? The young attorney's face burned red. And no, Your Honor, I simply meant that. That argument, the judge said, is both legally and logically bankrupt. I nearly choked back a laugh. After 30 minutes of testimony and evidence, the judge leaned back in her chair with the heavy sigh of someone reconsidering her career choices. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, voice low but firm, "your actions were reckless, deceitful, and profoundly irresponsible. You stole a car, caused significant property damage, attempted to flee the scene, and then attempted to coerce Ms. Thurman into committing insurance fraud." Adrian wiped his face aggressively, smearing his attempt at composure. "For these reasons, I am sentencing you to the following: 18 months probation, 200 hours community service, $500 in fines and court costs, mandatory enrollment in a safe driving course, no contact with Ms. Thurman, no calls, texts, visits, or indirect messages through others." The judge paused. "Any violation of this order will result in the reinstatement of a 90-day jail sentence. Do you understand?" He whimpered, "Yes, Your Honor." Court adjourned. Outside, as I walked toward the parking lot, I heard hurried footsteps and then a scream. "You ruined him!" Diane, storming toward me with the fury of a woman who had never allowed her son to experience consequences. "He could have died in that crash, and all you care about is your stupid car." I turned slowly. "He stole my car, lied, tried to get me to commit a felony. What did you expect me to do?" She jabbed a finger at me. "You should have protected him. A real girlfriend would have." A bailiff stepped between us. "Ma'am, you need to calm down or leave." Diane spat something unintelligible and stormed off. Adrian stayed behind, staring at me from across the lot, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. For the first time, I felt nothing for him. Not anger, not sadness, not even relief. Just nothing. 2 hours later, I sat in a different courtroom for the civil restitution hearing. My insurance company's attorney laid out the numbers. $53, $847 in damages, vehicle value, towing, legal fees, processing, everything. Adrian's attorney tried to argue hardship, that he had no ability to pay. The insurance lawyer didn't blink. Ability to pay does not erase liability. The judge ordered a payment plan of $500 per month for the next 9 years. Adrian broke. He put his face in his hands and sobbed real broken sobs this time. Not for me, not for what he had done. Only for himself. I walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight feeling not triumphant, not victorious. Just done. But Adrian wasn't done. Not yet. And I was about to learn just how far a desperate man would go when his world collapses around him. If I thought the court rulings would finally push Adrian toward accountability, I was painfully wrong. Some people hit rock bottom and climb out. Others start digging. For the first week after the hearings, things were quiet, unsettlingly quiet. No calls, no messages, no new attempts from Diane. Even his Instagram went dark. That silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like a breath being held. On the 8th day, it snapped. I woke to a barrage of notifications, dozens of screenshots from acquaintances, coworkers, even my cousin, all forwarding the same thing. A video. Adrian had recorded a long, tearful confession, except none of it was true. In the clip, he sat in a dimly lit bedroom, head in his hands, voice trembling with carefully crafted pain. "I didn't want to do this," he whispered dramatically, "but Barbara left me no choice. She's been emotionally abusive for months, controlling, manipulative. She forced me to take the Corvette to test me. She wanted me to fail." I stared at my phone in disbelief. He looked straight into the camera and said, "I'm scared of her." The comments were exploding. "OMG, she sounds toxic. Run, some women are crazy. Justice for Adrian." I should have expected it. Whenever men like Adrian are cornered, they reinvent themselves as victims. My lawyer's voice echoed in my head. "Document everything." So I downloaded the video, screenshotted the comments, archived the posts. Then I sent everything to my lawyer. 30 minutes later, she replied, "This violates his no-contact order. His probation officer needs to see this immediately." I sent the evidence in. By noon, Adrian's probation officer filed a formal violation report. By late afternoon, Adrian was in handcuffs again. Not for the wreck, not for the lies, not for stealing my car, but for trying to destroy me again. The judge wasn't amused. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, "I told you any indirect harassment counts as contact. Posting defamatory content about Ms. Thurman is a violation of probation. You were warned." His public defender tried a weak argument about artistic expression and emotional processing. The judge shut that down instantly. 30 days in county jail, she ruled. The bailiff took him before the sentence even fully left her mouth. Diane screamed at the judge. Diane screamed at the bailiff. Diane screamed at me. "No wonder he's broken. You did this, all of it. The bailiff threatened to remove her. She left only so she wouldn't be arrested too. For a few days, I actually felt lighter. Adrian was behind bars. The smear post stopped. The apartment was peaceful again. But the Fletcher family wasn't done. 3 days into Adrian's sentence, I received a call from the front desk of my building. Ms. Thurman, a woman named Diane is here to see you. My entire body tensed. I'm not available, I said quickly. She says it's about her son's medical bills. I almost laughed. Tell her I'm not seeing her. But something nudged me, a strange curiosity. I went downstairs but stayed behind the security door. Diane was waiting, clutching a folder of papers like she was holding evidence of some grand injustice. Barbara, she began already. Emotional, these are Adrian's medical bills from the crash. He suffered whiplash, over $4,000. Since you own the car he stole and crashed, we believe you should take responsibility. I blinked at her. You want me to pay his medical bills? It's the right thing to do, she spat. If you hadn't overreacted, he wouldn't be so stressed or hurt. A laugh burst out of me before I could stop it. She reared back like I'd slapped her. You're insane, I said calmly. And no, don't contact me again. I turned and walked away. She screamed after me about karma until security escorted her out. But Diane wasn't even the biggest surprise of the week. Adrian was, because apparently jail gave him ideas. 10 days into his sentence, I received a thick envelope from the courthouse. Inside, a small claims lawsuit filed by Adrian Fletcher against me for $5,000. His claim that I had illegally evicted him and caused emotional distress. My lawyer nearly choked laughing when she saw it. During the hearing, Adrian appeared in jail-issued clothing hands, cuffed, looking every bit the tragic hero he imagined himself to be. His argument lasted 45 seconds. He lived with her. She kicked him out without notice. My lawyer stepped forward. Your Honor, Mr. Fletcher was never a legal tenant. No lease, no rental agreement. He paid a portion of utilities voluntarily. He was staying as a guest. He committed multiple crimes with her property. Ms. Thurman had no legal obligation to issue notice. Judge glanced at the paperwork, nodded, and said, Case dismissed. Mr. Fletcher, you are ordered to pay court costs. Adrian stared at me like I'd stabbed him. Not with love, not with longing, with hate. Pure, unfiltered hate. And yet, I felt nothing but relief. After the hearing, life shifted. Not instantly, not cleanly, but slowly. I bought a used 2020 Camaro SS with my insurance payout. Not a Corvette, but it felt like a step forward. I replaced my couch, repainted the bedroom, removed every last object Adrian had touched. And then the strangest thing happened. I breathed, deeply, fully, like my lungs had been half full for months without me knowing. But peace is delicate, and healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes I'd stand in the garage staring at the empty spot where my Corvette used to sit and feel a strange mix of grief and gratitude. The car was gone, but so was Adrian. And for the first time, I understood something simple. Losing the Corvette hurt, but losing Adrian saved me. It's been 89 days since the crash that changed everything. My routines, my home, my sense of safety, my faith in the man I thought I loved. And now at the end of it all, I can finally see the whole picture with clarity instead of pain. Adrian didn't just wreck my Corvette. He wrecked every illusion I had about him. The process of cleaning up after him, emotionally, legally, financially, unfolded slowly like peeling away layers of rot I didn't know were there. And now that the dust has settled, this is where everyone stands. Adrian Fletcher, a criminal record, 18 months of probation, a 30-day jail sentence served after his probation violation, a civil judgment of $53,847 with a payment plan of $500 a month for 9 years, jobless after losing his second part-time position, still living with his mother Diane, still complaining about how the world is unfair, still refusing to take responsibility for anything. His license remains suspended. He can't get it reinstated until he pays fines he can barely afford. Mutual acquaintances tell me he's angry all the time now, bitter, depleted, obsessed with painting himself as the victim of a treacherous girlfriend. But they also tell me something else. His life collapsed because he never believed consequences applied to him. He still doesn't. Diane Fletcher, the mother-in-law I never officially had. Her reputation in her church group took a hit after she tried to storm my building demanding I pay Adrian's medical bills. Apparently someone recorded her meltdown, and it made the rounds among her social circles. She still blames me for everything, but now instead of screaming at my door, she screams to anyone who will listen. When she sees me around town, her face tightens with controlled disgust, as if I'm a walking cautionary tale sent to personally test her faith. I ignore her, effortlessly. Me, Barbara Thurman. I kept my job. I kept my condo. I kept my sanity. But what I gained was far more important. I bought a 2020 Camaro SS with the insurance payout. It's not a Corvette, but when I first sat behind the wheel, I felt something warm and steady growing inside me, like a reminder that I could rebuild anything I lost piece by piece. My home looks different now, cleaner, brighter, lighter. I started taking long drives again, letting the wind drown out the lingering echoes of Adrian's voice. With every mile, I felt pieces of myself returning parts I didn't notice he was slowly eroding. I've been going to therapy, not because I'm broken, but because I wanted to understand how someone like Adrian ever got this close to me in the first place. The answer was simple. I kept believing he was the man he pretended to be, not the man he actually was. Now I trust myself more than I ever have. I've begun dating casually, not seriously, not urgently, just slowly dipping my toes back into a world I once believed was predictable. I'm more cautious now, not guarded, just aware. I'm learning that I'm stronger than I gave myself credit for. I'm learning that silence is not peace if it comes from suppressing your needs. I'm learning that sometimes the people you'd do anything for would do nothing for you. But the biggest lesson, love does not mean sacrificing your integrity. Love does not require you to commit crimes. Love does not demand your destruction. The final closure. Yesterday, I passed a Corvette on the highway, midnight blue, just like mine. For a moment, a sharp ache pierced my chest. I remembered the feel of the steering wheel beneath my hands, the sound of the engine, the pride of knowing I had earned every inch of that car. But then the ache softened, because as beautiful as that car was, losing it wasn't the greatest cost of this whole ordeal. The real loss was believing Adrian loved me the way I loved him. And the real victory was walking away before he dragged me down with him. In the end, the Corvette was just metal. I was the one worth saving. And I saved myself. So here is the truth spoken clearly, finally, without fear. He wrecked my car. And his own life. I just stopped letting him take mine with him. My name is Pansy Bentley, and I'm writing this from my childhood bedroom. The same room with fading posters, dusty trophies, and walls that once felt too small. Tonight they feel even smaller. It's strange how a place you outgrow can still be the only place you have left to fall apart in. If you had walked in moments ago, you would have found me sitting on the floor, clutching a box of old keepsakes, wondering how I managed to ruin the one relationship that ever felt steady. But if I'm being honest, I already know the answer. It started with my mother. Eric Ward and I had been together for 2 years. We'd moved into his apartment 8 months earlier, a warm, quiet space where everything had its place, and nothing was ever chaotic unless I brought the chaos in myself. He wasn't dramatic or flashy. He didn't make a show of love. He lived it. He meal prepped for both of us on Sundays, remembered my preferences without being asked, and once stayed up until 3 a.m. fixing my laptop because I was terrified of missing a deadline. Eric didn't shout. He didn't belittle. He didn't keep score. But according to my mother, that was the problem. He's too comfortable, she'd say whenever I visited home. A man who really loves you should fight for you, chase you, fear losing you. Her voice became a second conscience, whispering doubts I never used to have. Every time Eric didn't reply to a message right away, her words echoed. Every time he said he was too tired to go out, I wondered if I'd become forgettable to him. I should have remembered something important. My mother has been divorced twice. Her expertise was more fear than wisdom, but I didn't see that then. 2 weeks ago, she visited. She watched Eric and me move around our home together, the way he quietly brewed my tea when I had a headache, the way he excused himself early because he had a 6 a.m. shift the next morning. And somehow she twisted all of it into evidence. That Sunday night, she pulled me aside. "You need to test him." I blinked. "What?" "A real man chases the woman he loves. Walk out during an argument. If he follows, he's yours. If he doesn't, well, then you have your answer." "That's manipulative," I tried to argue. "It's protection," she insisted. "Every woman in our family has done it. My grandmother tested my grandfather the same way they were married 52 years. She wore me down, slowly, steadily, inch by inch. By the end of the night, her certainty felt like truth. I didn't realize I had accepted a poison disguised as advice. Last Tuesday, I followed the script she planted in my head. The fight I started was ridiculous. Something about Eric not planning anything special for our anniversary, which was 6 weeks away. He looked confused at first, then hurt. Pansy, I literally showed you the reservation confirmation last week. It's not about the reservation, I snapped. It's about how you make me feel. He paused, really paused. Not defensive, not dismissive, just thoughtful, calm. Okay, he said softly. What do you need me to do differently? That wasn't how it was supposed to go. My mother said he'd get flustered, emotional, desperate. Instead, he stayed himself steady, grounded, honest. So I escalated, and escalated, and escalated. You know what? Forget it. I'm leaving, I said, grabbing my purse. Maybe when I'm gone, you'll realize what you had. I slammed the door and drove to a grocery store parking lot. It was nearly empty, lit only by buzzing fluorescent lamps. I sat there waiting for the script to continue the way my mother described it. 1 hour went by. No call. 2 hours. Nothing. 3. Still silence. By hour 4, the anger evaporated and dread took its place. What if something had happened to him? What if he was hurt, sick, unconscious? What if he needed me? I drove back, heart pounding. What I found wasn't a crisis, just 4 cardboard boxes stacked neatly by the front door. My clothes, my books, my toiletries, my life with him condensed into corners of corrugated paper. Eric sat on the couch, hands clasped loosely, gaze steady. What? My voice cracked. What is this? You left, he said. Not coldly, just factually, quietly. I assumed you were done. I packed your things to make it easier. I didn't mean it, I whispered, panic tightening my throat. I only said I was leaving to see if you'd, realize what you had. His expression shifted, not anger, not hurt, something closer to disappointment and worse, recognition. That's a test, he said. I don't chase people who play games. It was just a fight I begged. Couples fight. No, Pansy. You manufactured conflict to see how I'd react. That's manipulation. I don't do manipulation. The quiet in his voice hurt more than shouting ever could have. I'm sorry, I said, tears burning down my cheeks. It was my mom's idea. She told me to do it. He nodded slightly, as though that explained everything and nothing at once. I know your mom has her own ideas about relationships, he said, but you made the choice to act on them. That's on you. Please, just give me another chance. He shook his head. You should go. And just like that, the life we built was over. I drove to my parents' house, sobbing so hard I could barely see the road. My mother opened the door and pulled me into her arms before I even stepped inside. He kicked me out, I cried. Her response, good. Now you know he never really loved you. Something cracked inside me when she said that. A small fracture, subtle but deep. A warning I didn't understand yet. Because that night, sitting in my childhood room, I finally allowed myself to wonder, what if Eric wasn't the one who failed me? What if the problem had been growing roots long before he ever came into my life? I used to think the worst part of a breakup was the moment it happened, the shock, the heartbreak, the unraveling. But I was wrong. The worst part is the week after, when every consequence you set in motion comes back to greet you, one by one, like ghosts lining up to show you what you destroyed. My mother treated the breakup like she had predicted it, like she'd been waiting for Eric to fail so she could nod and say she was right all along. Any man who packs your things that fast was already halfway out the door, she declared at breakfast, sipping coffee like a queen, surveying ruins. I kept my eyes down, or maybe he has boundaries. She didn't respond. She didn't even acknowledge the possibility. She was already on her phone, tapping furiously, her brows tight with purpose. That alone made anxiety twist inside my stomach. A minute later, she slid her phone across the table toward me. I messaged him, she said. My blood ran cold. Mom, what did you do? He needs to be told, she insisted. Someone has to hold him accountable. On her screen, the text read, This is her mother. You owe my daughter an apology. She made one small mistake and you threw her away. A real man fights for the woman he loves. I felt the world tilt. Why would you interfere? This isn't your place. She lifted her chin because clearly you won't defend yourself. 20 minutes later, Eric responded respectfully but firmly. Ma'am, your daughter admitted she tested me. I don't apologize for having self-respect. Please don't contact me again. My mother's face twisted. The audacity of this man. He's right, I whispered. Her head snapped toward me. What did you say? He's right, I repeated louder. I'm the one who manipulated him. She scoffed like she'd tasted something bitter. You're letting him win. He has you brainwashed. No, I just finally see it clearly. For the first time in my life, saying those words felt like choosing myself. My father, who'd been quietly reading the newspaper, set it down. That's funny, he said without looking up. I remember you testing me the same way. My mother's lips thinned. That is not the same. He met her eyes. It's exactly the same. You played those games for years. That's why we divorced. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother stood and left the room without another word. She didn't speak to either of us for 2 days. By then, the guilt inside me felt unbearable, heavy pulsing, impossible to ignore. I didn't expect Eric to want me back. That wasn't the point. The point was telling him the truth, without excuses, without hiding behind my mother's voice. So I texted him. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to apologize sincerely. I played a game. I hurt you. You didn't deserve it. I'm sorry, and I wish you well. When his response came, it was gentle and final. Thank you for the apology. I hope you find what you're looking for. Please don't contact me again. A clean wound, honest and straightforward, and somehow that made it hurt even more. When my mother found out I apologized, she lost her mind. You groveled to him, she shouted, after how he treated you. He didn't treat me badly, I said quietly. I treated him badly. Her voice rose. I did not raise you to be a doormat. No, you raised me to test people until they failed. Her expression froze, not with anger, but with something far more fragile fear. She didn't understand how I'd gotten away from her script. But the fallout was just beginning. My phone started ringing nonstop. My aunt, my grandmother, a cousin, a family friend. Each had the same sympathetic tone. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry about your awful ex. I can't believe he threw you out like that. It must have been devastating to learn he never loved you. With every call, I corrected them. With every correction, they refused to believe me. My mother had already told them, her version dramatic, embellished, and entirely false. It wasn't until my younger sister reached out that the truth finally got air. She'd messaged Eric directly to defend me. She expected him to be a monster. Instead, he replied with a single devastating sentence. Your sister played a manipulation game your mother taught her. I chose not to participate. My sister came straight to my room, her expression pale. Pansy, so what does he mean Mom taught you? I told her everything. The test, the advice, the pressure, the twisted justification. I expected her to be shocked. Instead, she went disturbingly quiet. Finally, she said, You know Mom did the same thing to Dad, right? And to her second husband. I froze. What? She kept journals, my sister said. Pages of strategies. Stuff like, make him jealous to keep him interested, or walk out during a fight. If he doesn't chase, he doesn't love you. I found it once. My throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know how she whispered, or if you would even hear it. I sat on my childhood bed, the weight of decades crashing over me. My mother didn't just influence me. She shaped me. She sculpted my expectations of love. She planted the seeds of sabotage long before Eric ever entered my life. And for the first time, I understood something terrifying. What happened with Eric wasn't an isolated mistake. It was inherited. A legacy of manipulation passed down like an heirloom. A legacy I had just repeated. A legacy I had to break. But breaking something that deep comes with consequences I wasn't prepared for. 3 weeks after this breakup, I thought the worst had passed. The crying, the shame, the endless replays in my mind of everything I could have done differently. All of it had finally started to dull. Not disappear, but soften. Enough for me to breathe without feeling like needles were scattered in my lungs. But then word reached my mother that Eric was seeing someone new. I learned it the normal way, quietly and directly, through a mutual friend who approached the subject with all the caution of someone defusing a bomb. Hey, just so you know, Eric's been seeing someone, a nurse. Seems nice. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But I didn't rage or spiral or collapse in a heap of heartbreak, because I knew what I'd done. I knew who had lit the match. And I knew Eric didn't owe me a waiting period after I detonated our relationship. But my mother, she reacted like he'd committed a war crime. 3 weeks, she screeched, pacing the kitchen. 3 weeks, and he's already with another woman. That proves he never loved you. No, I said calmly. It proves he's allowed to move on. I'm the one who destroyed everything. She ignored me, because the truth wasn't useful to her narrative. I should have known then that she wasn't done making everything worse. That afternoon, Eric sent me a screenshot. A message from my mother to the new girlfriend Lily, a woman neither of us had ever met. You should know the man you're dating kicked out his girlfriend of 2 years for no reason. He's emotionally abusive. Be careful. My stomach dropped so hard I felt physically ill. I called my mother immediately. What is wrong with you? I'm protecting other women, she snapped. Someone has to warn her. By lying. By harassing strangers. Mom, you're not protecting anyone. You're obsessed. She hung up on me. 15 minutes later, Eric texted again. I need your mother to stop contacting people in my life. This is harassment. I don't want to involve lawyers, but I will if I have to. Shame washed over me in a wave so deep it felt like drowning. I apologized. I promised him I'd handle it. Handling it meant confronting my mother with a level of honesty I'd never dared express before. I drove to her house, walked straight into the living room, and said, "This has to stop. You're attacking people because you don't want to admit you were wrong." "I was trying to help," she said, her voice trembling with indignation. "No, you were trying to prove you were right, and you're hurting people, Mom. Strangers. Me. Yourself." She pointed a finger at me. "You're choosing him over your own mother." "I'm choosing reality," I said. "And if you contact him or anyone in his life again, I'm going no contact." Her face crumpled in disbelief. Manipulators always look confused when their tricks stop working. But I meant every word. Unfortunately, she didn't believe that. 3 days later, Eric texted once more. Another screenshot, another message sent to Lily from a fake profile. My mother had created an alias just to continue her crusade. Lily finally snapped. She posted publicly on her social media, "To the mother who keeps messaging me about my boyfriend, I've seen the screenshots. I know the real story. Your daughter admitted she played a manipulation game. Please get therapy and leave us alone." The post spread fast. People we knew shared it. People we didn't know shared it. The comments filled with speculation, disbelief, and eventually, recognition. Because my mother's second ex-husband, the one she divorced 8 years ago, commented under the post. "This tracks. She used to test me constantly, walk out during fights, make scenes to see if I'd chase her. After the 15th time, I stopped." She filed for divorce a month later. 15th time. I felt the blood drain from my body. My mother had spent decades rehearsing the same script with husbands, with boyfriends, with her daughters. And the moment the world saw it clearly, everything she'd built began to collapse. Her friend group found out. Her church group found out. Her book club found out. One by one, people she'd influenced for years realized she'd given them the same toxic advice that had sabotaged their own marriages and relationships. My phone rang that night. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "They're attacking me," she cried. "They're bullying me. They're ruining my reputation." "No, Mom," I said softly. "You did that." "This is your fault," she choked out. "You told them. You made them turn against me." "I didn't tell anyone," I replied. "Your actions told them." She hung up. The next morning, she posted on social media about healing from betrayal and recovering from people who should have protected her. It lasted 40 minutes before she deleted it after dozens of comments held her accountable. Her collapse wasn't loud. It was quiet, humiliating, and public in the way manipulators fear most people finally saw the truth. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Because beneath all the noise, the posts, the screenshots, the arguments, I finally saw my mother for who she truly was. A woman desperately clinging to a worldview that had destroyed every relationship she'd ever touched. A worldview she had passed down to me like an inheritance. And I was finally painfully beginning to understand the cost of rejecting it. Everything that happened after the public fallout felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, but muted like the world was holding its breath. The storm had passed, but the air was still heavy thick with what it left behind. My mother wasn't the same, and neither was I. For the first time in her life, she couldn't spin the narrative. She couldn't twist the truth into a weapon or reshape a mess into someone else's fault. People she'd known for decades pulled away from her. Invitations stopped. Messages stopped. 3 close friends went silent altogether after realizing she'd fed them the same toxic relationship strategies that had contributed to their own divorces. Her world was shrinking, and she didn't know how to live in a world that didn't worship the image she projected. My father called me one evening, his voice low and tired. "Your mother's not doing well," he said. I expected anger in his tone. I expected bitterness. Instead, he sounded like a man who'd seen this movie too many times. "She's devastated. She's telling everyone she's being bullied. She harassed Eric's girlfriend," I whispered. "She lied. She created fake accounts. What did she expect?" He sighed. "Pansy, you know your mother. Admitting fault is nearly impossible for her." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he added, "I should have warned you when you were younger." "Warned me about what?" He hesitated. Then the truth came out like a slow exhale. "Your mother tested me constantly. For years. She'd walk out and expect me to chase her. Create fights out of thin air, just to see if I cared. I kept chasing. Until one day, I couldn't anymore. A heaviness settled in my chest. It was one thing to know it intellectually, through stories, through hints. It was another thing entirely to hear my father say it plainly. "I didn't want you and your sister growing up thinking love was a battlefield," he continued. "But I didn't know how to explain it without making you resent her. So I stayed quiet. And a generation later, I repeated the same mistake in my own relationship. When I hung up, I sat alone on my bed, realizing that this wasn't just about Eric. It wasn't even about my mother. This was about patterns, cycles, inherited behaviors that lived inside me like reflexes I didn't know I had. No wonder my apology to Eric felt like the first honest thing I'd said in months. It was the first time I'd stepped out of her shadow. But stepping out meant stepping into something terrifying, my own accountability. Therapy wasn't something I ever imagined doing. Growing up, my mother called therapy a waste of money and insisted good women figure things out themselves. But I couldn't trust my instincts anymore, not when they'd been shaped by someone who viewed manipulation as a love language. So I began seeing a therapist. In our first session, she asked, "When did you first learn that love feels unsafe?" The question was so direct it made my throat burn. I didn't answer right away, because answering meant admitting something I had never dared to think. I learned it from my mother. Therapy didn't break me open in dramatic, cinematic ways. It was slow, uncomfortable, like peeling wallpaper and realizing there are moldy layers beneath. But it was honest, and that honesty felt like oxygen after years of inhaling smoke. My sister started therapy too. She told me about it while we sat together in her car, windows cracked, letting the evening breeze cool our faces. "I almost tried to make Mark jealous last week," she admitted suddenly, just to see if he'd react. And I heard myself, and I froze. It wasn't even intentional. It was just muscle memory. We sat in silence for a long moment. "It's like deprogramming," she whispered. "Mom taught us how to sabotage love, and now we have to learn how not to." I reached for her hand. She squeezed back. We both knew it wouldn't be simple. My mother, of course, didn't go to therapy, at least not the real kind. Instead, she checked herself into a wellness retreat and posted about healing from betrayal and rising from the ashes. She included a filtered selfie of herself wrapped in a spa robe, pretending serenity she didn't feel. But the comments weren't kind. People had seen too much, heard too much, connected too many dots. She deleted the post within hours. The retreat didn't last either. When she came home, she tried to frame it as a spiritual transformation, but nothing about her had changed. She still flinched when confronted, still bristled at accountability, still insisted the world had turned against her unfairly. But she was quieter now, softer around the edges. Not humbled, not truly, but shaken. And for once, her voice didn't overpower mine. I set boundaries, real ones, short calls, limited conversations. And the moment she tried to give advice or twist the truth, I ended the interaction. She learned quickly that I wasn't playing games anymore. Eric faded from my day-to-day life, not out of malice, but out of necessity. I unfollowed him on social media, stopped checking his posts, stopped letting my mother's obsession distort him into anything other than what he had always been. A good man, a steady man, a man who deserved honesty. And eventually the ache I felt when I thought of him became quieter too. Not gone, but no longer the center of my world. One morning while I was packing up some old belongings, I found a small note he once left in my work bag. Something simple, something gentle. "Remember to eat lunch today. You always forget when you're stressed. E." I held it for a long time. Not with regret, but with gratitude. He had loved me in the healthiest way he knew how, and I, shaped by the wrong teacher, didn't know how to receive it. But I was learning, slowly, painfully, honestly. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to test love. I was trying to understand it, and that felt like the beginning of something new. Everything in my life felt strangely split now, the person I used to be and the person I was becoming. Not better, not healed, not perfect, just aware. Aware of where my instincts came from, aware of why I reacted the way I did, aware of how much of my love life had been written in someone else's handwriting. 2 months had passed since the breakup, and I was no longer waking up with a lump of regret lodged in my throat. The regret was still there, but quieter, softer around the edges. Not a wound anymore, more like a scar I could trace without flinching. In all that time, Eric and I didn't speak once. Strangely, it wasn't the silence that hurt me the most. It was accepting that he owed me nothing, not closure, not conversation, not forgiveness. And that acceptance was its own kind of growing pain. My mother, however, was still in the middle of her own unraveling. The consequences of her actions didn't die down. In fact, they deepened. People she'd known for years kept their distance. Her book club asked her to take a temporary leave. Her church group gently suggested she reflect privately for a while. And her longtime friends, the ones she used to confide in, turned cold after piecing together how her relationship advice had quietly damaged their own marriages. For a woman who lived and breathed social validation, it was a free fall. Whenever she called, she sounded smaller. Not humble, just frightened. Not self-aware, just paranoid. Not apologetic, just desperate to claw back the image she'd lost. "I don't understand why everyone's attacking me," she cried one evening over the phone. "I'm not attacking you," I said softly. "I'm just not protecting you from the truth anymore. You're choosing strangers over your own mother." "No, I'm choosing accountability, something you've never chosen for yourself." There was a pause, long and brittle. Then she whispered, "I don't recognize you anymore." And for once that felt like a compliment. My father and I grew closer in the quiet way people do when they finally put down a burden they've shared silently for years. He started telling me things he'd never told me before, not because he wanted to turn me against her, but because he finally felt safe telling the truth. He told me about the nights she stormed out over imagined offenses, the arguments that weren't arguments until she made them one, the tests she created that he kept trying and failing to pass. "She taught you that love is a performance," he said gently. "But it's not. It's not a series of hoops. It's not a chase. It's not a test. It's partnership. It's communication. It's boring sometimes, but the right kind of boring." It was the first time I understood that quiet, stable love wasn't a flaw, it was a foundation. A type of love I'd had once, and thrown away. My sister made progress in therapy too, wrestling with her own tendencies before they could become real damage in her relationship. "It's like realizing you were raised speaking a toxic dialect," she said one night as we sat on her sofa, "and now you have to relearn the language from scratch." I nodded, but at least now we know it's a dialect. Before we thought it was the whole world. We shared a look, something tired, something hopeful, something like mutual courage. We weren't going to pass this poison down to anyone else. Then, one afternoon, I ran into Eric's best friend at a coffee shop. The timing was cruel. I was wearing sweatpants, no makeup, and holding a bag of cat food because my errands had gotten mixed up. He looked exactly the same, warm, approachable, a little too perceptive for my comfort. He approached me gently. "Hey, Pansy." "Hey." The awkwardness hung between us like fog. Finally, he cleared his throat. "For what it's worth, he was pretty torn up about everything. He really did care about you." My chest tightened, but not painfully, just truthfully. "I know," I said quietly. "He deserved better." The friend nodded. "He's doing okay now. Lily's good for him." "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it. He deserves that too. We parted ways, and I realized something important. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for him. Not for a second chance. Not for a miracle that would undo what I had done. I was moving forward. Therapy taught me something I never expected. Tests don't measure love. They measure fear. And the people who stay through manipulation aren't proving devotion. They're proving a lack of boundaries. Real love doesn't need to be chased. Real love doesn't require tricks. Real love doesn't collapse just because someone didn't run after you. I had lost a good man because I let someone else's fears become my instincts. But loss doesn't have to be a punishment. It can be a teacher, a boundary, a new beginning. A woman can break a cycle even if she spent years living inside it. So I'm breaking mine. No more tests, no more games, no more inherited sabotage disguised as romance. My mother may never understand what she did to me, to my sister, to herself. But I do, and understanding means I don't have to repeat any of it. Not in my next relationship, not in my friendships, not in my life. One day I'll love again quietly, honestly, without conditions. But for now, I'm learning to love myself without testing whether I'm worth chasing. And that's the first real love I've ever known. My name is Cynthia Stevenson, and this is the story of how one single laugh, sharp, careless, and cruel, shattered whatever innocence I still had about trust, loyalty, and the quiet rot that can grow inside a relationship when only one person respects the boundaries. It started on a Thursday evening, simple and ordinary, the kind of night where you're supposed to feel safe in your own home. My boyfriend Brandon had just gotten another late-night notification from his phone. The screen lit up with the name that had become a problem long before I admitted it to myself. Natalie, his coworker, his new coworker, the woman who arrived at his company 3 months ago and immediately became everything. Lunch partner, inside joke buddy, late-night confidant. He didn't even bother hiding the messages anymore. I could see them from across the couch. "Thinking about that thing you said today. You're hilarious. Still awake." I swallowed the discomfort building in my chest and tried for the 100th time to approach it calmly. "Brandon," I said, "I'm not comfortable with how much you and Natalie text, especially this late." He didn't nod. He didn't reflect. He didn't even pretend to understand. He laughed. Not a confused laugh. Not a "how silly is this" laugh. But a sharp, mocking, full-volume laugh right in my face. Oh my God, Cynthia, he said, wiping his eyes as if I had just told a joke. You're so insecure. The words were thrown like darts. I can talk to whoever I want, whenever I want. This is 2024, not 1950. I stared at him, trying to process how quickly my vulnerability had become his punchline. I'm not saying you can't have friends, I whispered. I'm saying texting a woman, "Good night, beautiful," crosses a line. You're being controlling, he snapped. This is your problem, not mine. Work on your trust issues. There it was, the pivot. The way every concern somehow became a character flaw on my part. Over the next few weeks, it only got worse. At gatherings with his friends, I noticed the shift. Side glances, smirks, little comments like, "Cynthia, relax. He's allowed to have female friends. You're not one of those girlfriends, are you?" I felt myself shrinking the way people do when their truth keeps getting twisted into a weapon against them. But nothing compared to the night everything snapped. Brandon was getting ready to go out for drinks with his team. He put on the fitted shirt I bought him for our anniversary, spritzes the cologne he knows drives me crazy, and styled his hair with more care than I'd seen in months. Is it just the team, I asked softly? He glanced at me in the mirror. Why does it matter? I can go wherever I want, with whoever I want. Stop suffocating me. The words landed heavy, and suddenly something inside me stopped breaking and started hardening. You're right, I said slowly. You can. He paused, confused by my sudden agreement. Finally. Thank you for understanding. No problem, I replied. And you know what? I think I'll start applying the same philosophy. His head snapped toward me. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing bad, I said with a shrug. Just means I can talk to whoever I want to. Same rules for both of us. He rolled his eyes. Whatever makes you feel better about your insecurity. He walked out the door, feeling victorious. He didn't know that was the moment everything shifted. I sat quietly for 10 minutes, staring at the door he had smugly closed behind him, then reached for my phone and made a call. Here's something Brandon never considered his family adored me. Not tolerated, not politely accepted. Adored. His father, Gerald, loved talking to me about old cars and restoration projects. His younger brother, Liam, had practically become my little shadow every holiday, always eager to show me his new guitar riffs. His mother, Karen, called me every few weeks for help with anything technological. And then there were his cousins, the ones Brandon dismissed as unimportant, uninteresting, or too needy. Mark, a photographer, struggling to get his work into galleries. Charles, a content creator with a small but passionate food channel. Both talented, both overlooked, both hungry for anyone to believe in them. I texted Mark first. Hey, I saw your latest photo set on Instagram. Beautiful work. Ever thought about submitting to local galleries? His response was instant. Oh wow, thank you. I'd love to, but I have no idea how to get started. I know someone who owns a gallery downtown, I typed. Want an intro? You're an angel. Yes, please. Then Charles. Your latest video was amazing. My company's looking for someone to do short-form content for our lunch series. Interested pays well. What yes? Cynthia, seriously, thank you. I didn't flirt. I didn't push boundaries. I didn't cross lines. I just did something Brandon rarely did. I treated his family with kindness. Over the next 2 weeks, I grabbed coffee with Mark, helped Charles polish his portfolio, and met Evan, the cousin returning to town soon. All harmless, all supportive, all open book interactions. Brandon didn't notice at first. Natalie kept him busy. But then came the weekly family dinner. I walked in chatting with Mark about his upcoming gallery meeting, and Brandon froze mid-conversation. His eyes narrowed the way someone's do when their reflection suddenly shifts into something they don't like. Since when are you two so close? He asked. Mark smiled proudly. Cynthia's been incredible. She got me connected with a gallery owner. Might have my first show soon. Brandon's forced smile was almost painful to look at. During dinner, Charles announced he'd landed the social media gig. Thanks to Cynthia, he added, clinking his glass. She recommended me to her company. Gerald raised his beer. This woman does more for family than some people I know. The comment hit Brandon square in the ego, and his mother chimed in. Cynthia, you have the kindest heart. Brandon is lucky. Lucky. He didn't feel lucky. Under the table, Brandon's foot found mine, hard. And when dinner was over, he cornered me in the kitchen. What are you doing? He hissed. Talking to whoever I want, I said sweetly. Same rules, remember. My family, really. They're nice people. We have things in common. That's allowed, right? His jaw tightened. This is different, and you know it. How they're just friends. His face reddened. You're not being insecure, are you? I whispered. He stormed out without a word. For the first time in months, I felt calm, because he had no idea that I had only just begun. Brandon didn't mention the family dinner again, but the shift in his behavior was impossible to miss. The man who used to brag that he never gets jealous suddenly cared very much about who I was speaking to and when. His eyes tracked my phone like a spotlight waiting for any flicker of a name he didn't approve of. Equality is always comfortable until it's truly equal. My days continued the same way they had since I adopted his rules. I met Mark for coffee to talk about possible themes for his gallery submission. I had lunch with Charles to help finalize his contract for the social media role at my company. I exchanged a few texts with Evan as he prepared for his big move to the city. Everything was harmless, thoughtful, and open. But every time my phone buzzed, Brandon's shoulders tensed. One night, when Mark texted to confirm his meeting time with the gallery owner, I felt Brandon's gaze snap to me. "Why is my cousin texting you at 9 at night?" "Gallery stuff," I replied calmly. "He has his meeting tomorrow." "Why?" "It's late." I looked at him unblinking. "You text Natalie later than this." "That's different." "How?" His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but no explanation came out. There wasn't one that didn't incriminate him. I watched the panic flicker behind his eyes as the mirror he'd forced me to look into finally faced him. The rules he used to justify everything suddenly felt like they weren't written for both of us after all. Good. Let him finally taste the imbalance I'd been choking on. When Evan officially moved into town, he texted me the moment he arrived. His mother Gloria had given him my number weeks earlier. "Cynthia just got here. Do you know any good gyms or restaurants? I'm totally lost." I sent him a long list of recommendations, places I knew and loved. He sounded genuinely appreciative, and since I remember how isolating a new city can feel, I offered to show him around on Saturday. Harmless, human, kind. Unless you're Brandon. The moment I mentioned the plan, he looked like I'd slapped him. "You're going out with my cousin," he demanded. "He's new here," I said. "I'm showing him around town." "That's a date." "It's being helpful," I countered gently. "Like when you helped Natalie find an apartment. Remember you spent an entire Saturday with her." His face went pale. It was remarkable how selective his memory became only when the mirror faced me. Suddenly, the exact thing he did for Natalie was unacceptable if I did it for Evan. "I can't believe you're doing this," he whispered. "Doing what?" "Being nice to your family." "You're crossing a line." "No," I said softly. "I'm following the rules you set. You said we can both talk to whoever we want." He stared at me as though seeing a version of me he'd never considered possible. Not obedient, not guilty, not shrinking. Just equal, and he hated it. Saturday arrived warm and bright. Evan and I wandered through the farmer's market, grabbed coffee at my favorite little shop, and I introduced him to some of my running club friends so he could meet people his age. We took a group photo and posted it with a simple caption, "Welcome to town, Evan." Nothing suggestive, nothing secretive, nothing like the late-night inside joke-filled posts Natalie used to tag Brandon in before deleting them. But Brandon called me 15 times that afternoon. 15. It was almost poetic. I used to stare at my phone, counting the hours, since Brandon had last messaged me when he was out with Natalie. Now he was the one spinning. When I came home, he was sitting rigid on the couch, every muscle tight. "Everyone's asking why my girlfriend is out with my cousin," he snapped. "It's embarrassing." "Why?" I asked. "We're just friends." "That's not the same. Unless," I tilted my head. "Are you saying men and women can't be just friends?" He froze, trapped in his own double standard. If he said yes, he'd admit his behavior with Natalie was inappropriate. If he said no, he had no basis for complaint. For the first time, he felt the walls he built closing in on him instead of around me. "No," he muttered finally. "They can be friends." "Good," I said softly. "Then you have nothing to worry about." He looked like the ground had tilted under him. Later that night, while I showered, he broke another rule he used to lecture me about. He went through my phone. I knew the second I walked out and saw him sitting on the bed, holding it like a weapon that had misfired. "There's nothing inappropriate," he said, almost confused. "Correct. But you have a group chat with my cousins." "Yes. We're planning Mark's gallery opening. They asked me for help." And the theme, his voice cracked. Supporting family, since Brandon won't. His cousins had chosen that subtitle. I hadn't objected. I didn't need to. He looked devastated not because he felt guilty, but because he felt exposed. For months he'd insisted that I was the problem, that my discomfort was irrational, that Natalie was just a friend. Now the people he'd neglected were praising me for doing everything he never bothered to do. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't revenge, it was reflection, and he didn't like what he saw. "You're trying to make me jealous," he whispered. "Am I asked? Or are you just not used to being held to the same standard?" His silence was admission. By the time Friday arrived, Mark's gallery opening had become the gravitational center of the entire family. I'd helped with everything, marketing setup, promotion things Brandon could have done at any time but never cared enough to try. He showed up dressed like he wanted the night to be about him, but it wasn't. One by one, his relatives approached me, thanking me, praising me, celebrating me. I watched his posture shrink with each compliment. And then, like both fate and irony conspiring at once, Natalie walked in. She went straight to Brandon, threw her arms around him, and laughed too loudly at whatever inside joke they shared. Even she seemed to sense too late that the room didn't see her as a harmless coworker. Brandon stiffened. His mother frowned. His father crossed his arms. Evan leaned closer and whispered, "People have seen them out late together, drinking. Without you." I didn't cry, didn't flinch, didn't even feel surprised. I just felt the final piece click into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't accidental. This was exactly what I thought it was. And I wasn't the only one who saw it anymore. The unraveling had begun. The night of Mark's gallery opening didn't just expose cracks in my relationship with Brandon. It exposed the fractures he'd spent months pretending weren't there. And for the first time, it wasn't just me seeing them. His entire family, his cousins, even his coworkers. They all watched the illusion unravel in real time. Natalie lingered too close to him throughout the event, her hand brushing his arm every few minutes, her laughter aimed exclusively at him, her eyes shining in ways I recognize far too well. They looked exactly the way mine had looked months ago, back when I still believed his attention was something sacred. His cousin Charles gave me a look from across the room, a knowing, pointed look that said, "You see it too, right?" Yes, I saw everything. Brandon tried to distance himself from Natalie after noticing the way people stared, but every step he took away from her was 2 steps too late. Whispered conversations had already begun rippling through the room. Weren't they at that bar together last week? She's the one he always texts, right? Didn't Cynthia come alone tonight? Every whisper was a thread being pulled from the fabric he'd carefully spun around us. During the event, Charles pulled me aside near the refreshment table. "You know Brandon's been telling everyone you're trying to make him jealous, right?" he murmured, keeping his voice low. I raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Poor Brandon, victim of the controlling girlfriend." He sighed. "Pretty much. But nobody's buying it, especially not after that stunt with Natalie." "What stunt?" Charles glanced around, then tilted his phone toward me. A screenshot, a photo, a deleted Instagram story. Brandon and Natalie at a wine bar. 1 a.m., her leaning into him, his arm behind her chair. The caption, "Can't sleep without laughing first." Charles whispered, "Everyone saw it," before she deleted it. My chest didn't tighten, it didn't sink, it didn't shatter. Instead, it felt calm, as if my heart had already accepted the truth long before my mind caught up. I handed the phone back. "Thank you." He nodded, squeezing my shoulder gently. "You deserve better than this." For months, I'd repeated that same sentence in my own head, too afraid to say it aloud. Hearing someone else speak it, someone from his family, brought a quiet sense of validation I didn't know I needed. Mark's event wrapped up beautifully. He sold 3 pieces glowing with the kind of pride I'd hoped he'd feel all along. During his thank you speech, he looked straight at me. "I want to thank everyone who supported me," he said warmly, "especially my cousin's girlfriend, Cynthia, who believed in my work when I didn't even believe in myself." Every head turned toward me. Every smile felt genuine. Every compliment that followed felt like a subtle dig at Brandon. His mother chimed in afterward. "Brandon, you never helped him with this. Why not?" His response was a tight, dismissive shrug. "I've been busy." His father chuckled bitterly. "Too busy for family, but not too busy for Natalie, I see." Brandon's face drained of color. "Dad, it's not like that." His father raised an eyebrow. "Late-night drinks don't sound like work meetings." Natalie, overhearing, tried to excuse herself, but the attention had already stuck to her like static. Even she could sense the shift, how the warmth of the room had turned cold around her. When we finally got in the car to head home, the silence felt hard and metallic. Brandon gripped the steering wheel like he wanted to crush it. The second we stepped inside our apartment, the storm broke. "You turned my entire family against me," he exploded. "I didn't turn anyone," I said quietly. "I helped them. If that makes them question how you treat them, that's on you." "This is about Natalie," he spat. "You're being petty." "No," I said, steady and calm. "This is about respect. You laughed when I set a boundary. You dismissed months of discomfort. You made me feel irrational for expecting basic trust." He shook his head. "I told you she's just a friend." "So are your cousins," I said. "Funny how friendship is acceptable only when you're the one choosing who it's with." He opened his mouth, but the logic cut him off before he could force out another excuse. That night, he slept on the couch. Not because I sent him there, but because he knew he couldn't climb into bed beside me and pretend we were fine. The following week, tension wrapped around us like a taut wire. He hovered around me constantly, suddenly needing to know where I was going, who I was meeting, why I didn't text him immediately. Equality was suffocating him. On Wednesday morning, he casually mentioned a company dinner. "You're coming," he said flatly, like it was a command. "I can't," I replied. "I already have plans." "With who?" "Amy's having a housewarming party," I said. I promised to help her set up. I'd forgotten to tell him I was still using his cousin's old group chat name out of habit. Her actual name now was Evan, to reflect the gender swap. But the friction worked just the same. "Cancel it." "Why?" His eyes darted away. "Just come with me." "You can take Natalie," I said calmly. He froze. "I can't take Natalie." "Why not?" I asked softly. "She's just a friend." His jaw locked. A single muscle twitched under his eye. He went to the dinner alone. I went to Evan's housewarming with half his extended family. We posted pictures all night, selfies, group shots, a boomerang of us laughing over burnt cookies Evan tried to bake. Every notification made me imagine the vein in Brandon's forehead throbbing. By 2 a.m. he came home drunk, crying, collapsing onto the couch like his life was falling apart. "Everyone asked where you were," he sobbed. "I had to explain that you chose my cousin over me." "And you choose Natalie over me regularly," I said softly. "The difference is, I never pretended it was innocent." "This is emotional abuse," he whispered. "You're punishing me." "By following the same rules you gave me," I asked. "Explain how that's abuse." He couldn't, because he knew. On Thursday afternoon, the dam finally broke. His father called me. "Cynthia," he said in a low, heavy voice, "I need to tell you something. I saw Brandon and that Natalie woman at lunch today. They weren't acting like coworkers." My grip tightened around my phone. "What do you mean?" Holding hands across the table. She kissed his cheek when they left. There it was. The confirmation I had stopped needing but still deserved. I thanked him for telling me. By the time Brandon came home, I was already packing. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I'm leaving." "Because of Evan, I knew it." "No," I said. "Because your father saw you holding hands with Natalie today." He went white. "That's not he's lying." "Your father doesn't lie," I said calmly. He broke. Tears, excuses, gaslighting, blame. "You drove me to this," he screamed. "With your games." "No," I whispered. "I simply showed you what your philosophy looks like when it's reflected back." He collapsed in a heap on the floor crying, begging, bargaining. I folded my final shirt, zipped my suitcase, walked out. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. I didn't leave dramatically. No slammed doors, no screaming, no final speeches meant to scar. I just packed my things quietly, the same way I had cried in that relationship, quietly, invisibly, politely. Brandon followed me from room to room, pleading, bargaining, unraveling. The man who had once told me I was too emotional was now sobbing so hard he could barely form sentences. "You can't leave," he choked. "We can fix this. I'll stop texting Natalie. I'll block her. I'll do whatever you want." "You already did what you wanted," I said softly. "For months." "That wasn't I didn't, Cynthia, please." His voice cracked with desperation, but I didn't feel triumphant. There was no satisfaction in watching someone who hurt you finally understand the damage they caused. There was only exhaustion, deep, bone-tired exhaustion. I walked into the living room and zipped my suitcase. He grabbed the handle, hands shaking. "Don't go," he whispered. "I promise I'll change." "You don't need to change for me," I said. "You just need to admit what you've been doing." "I didn't cheat. You crossed every boundary I tried to set," I replied. "And the moment I lived by your standards, you broke." He swallowed hard. "You're choosing my family over me." "No," I corrected. "I'm choosing myself over you." He stumbled back like the words had struck him. I left before he could fall apart again. I stayed with a friend the first few nights. The silence in her guest room felt foreign at first, too quiet, too still. But with every passing hour, that silence began to feel like something I hadn't had in ages. Safety. Brandon, on the other hand, spiraled. The text began immediately. "Cynthia, please, we can work through this. Don't throw everything away. I'll do therapy. I'll do anything. Just come home." Then the anger. "How could you betray me like this? You're ruining our relationship. My family is on your side because you manipulated them. You're heartless." Then the desperation again. "I can't sleep. I can't eat. I need you. Please answer. I'm begging you." I didn't respond to a single message. It wasn't cruelty. It was closure. A door had closed when he spent months insisting didn't exist. 3 days later, I got a call from Gerald, his father. "I just wanted to check how you're doing," he said gently. "I'm adjusting," I answered. There was a pause. Then he cleared his throat and spoke in a tone heavy with disappointment. "I talked to Brandon again after what I told you. He finally admitted it." "Admitted what?" the hand-holding, the cheek kiss. Gerald exhaled sharply. He admitted they've been closer than he let on, and that he told Natalie he was unhappy with you. My stomach twisted, not from heartbreak, but from the sting of confirmation. I'm sorry, Gerald said softly. You didn't deserve that. He hesitated, then added something unexpected. You're still welcome at family dinners, you know. This whole thing, it isn't your fault. The gratitude that welled in my chest caught me by surprise. Thank you, I whispered. Truly. You've been better to this family than Brandon ever was, he said. You always have a place with us. And for the first time, I realized something that shook me more than the break itself. Brandon wasn't my loss. He was my escape. A week after moving out, I finally returned to the apartment to get the last of my things. Mostly books, a few dishes, a coat. He always complained took up too much space in the closet. Brandon was waiting. He looked broken, dark circles under his eyes, hair, unwashed hands trembling. Can we talk, he asked. I think we already did, I said. I miss you, he whispered. I haven't stopped thinking about you. You miss control, I replied gently. Not me. That's not true. But the look on his face said otherwise. I packed the final box, a stack of cookbooks, a framed photo of my dog, an old blanket. Brandon stood in the doorway, blocking my exit. I can't lose you, he said. Please, you're everything to me. If that were true, I said quietly, you wouldn't have treated me the way you did. He opened his mouth, but emotion choked off the words. I stepped past him. He didn't try to stop me again. When I reached the hallway, he called out one last time. Cynthia, am I a bad person? I didn't turn around. You're not a bad person, I said softly, but you're someone who refuses to take responsibility for the hurt you cause, and that makes you dangerous to love. He didn't say anything else. I carried my final box down the stairs, out the door, into my car, and drove away without looking back. But this wasn't the end. A storm was still building quietly, privately, on Brandon's side of the world, one that was about to collide with him harder than anything I could have inflicted. Because Natalie, she was about to show him exactly what happens when you think someone else's attention is yours to keep. And Brandon would learn painfully that sometimes the person you choose over your partner was never choosing you in the first place. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of silence from my end and chaos from Brandon's. 3 weeks of him trying to rebuild the narrative he had shattered with his own hands. 3 weeks of him learning what happens when the world finally sees you without the excuses you hide behind. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't plot anything. I simply moved on. But the universe has a way of serving justice quietly, precisely, and without needing my involvement. It started when Brandon went online. He posted a long, dramatized paragraph on social media about escaping an emotionally manipulative partner who tried to isolate him from his support system. A support system we all knew referred to Natalie. 2 months ago, that post might have worked. 2 months ago, people might have believed it. But not now. Not after everything that had unfolded at the gallery. Not after his parents witnessed his closeness with Natalie. Not after his cousins had experienced my support firsthand. The comments rolled in fast. From Mark. Didn't Cynthia help me get my first gallery show? She was the only one there for months. From Charles. She got me a job and never asked for a thing in return. From Evan. She's been nothing but respectful since I moved here. Where was all this supposed manipulation? And then the one that detonated the whole thread. From his father, Gerald. Maybe focus less on coworkers and more on why you lost a good woman. That comment alone got over 400 likes. Brandon deleted the entire post within an hour. But screenshots lived forever, and they circulated through his extended family until half of them were texting me asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I needed help moving more things, or if I wanted to attend upcoming family events without him. I shouldn't have felt relieved, but I did. Not because they chose me, but because they finally saw him. Then came the irony. The part of the story I hadn't seen coming, even though every clue had been right in front of me. Natalie was never interested in Brandon. Not like that. Not seriously. Not long term. She was using him for validation, a little late-night entertainment, a boost to her ego, someone to flirt with during slow afternoons at work, a man to lean on for attention when her real relationship wasn't giving her the thrill she wanted. Because Natalie, she had a girlfriend. A long-distance one. A real one. A serious one. And she didn't tell Brandon until the moment he became fully available. One of Brandon's co-workers reached out to me, almost sheepish. Yeah. Natalie shut him down pretty hard. Told him she wasn't interested in anything serious. Apparently she thought he knew she was taken. He didn't know. He never asked. He never cared about anything beyond how her texts made him feel. And just like that, Brandon learned what it felt like to be the side character in someone else's emotional story. He wasn't heartbroken because he loved her. He was heartbroken because she was never his in the first place. A week later, he called me. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't say hello. didn't ask how I was. He went straight to panic. Cynthia, she played me. Natalie used me. She has someone else. She always had someone else. Silence. Then he started crying. This is your fault, he sobbed. If you hadn't been so difficult about her, I wouldn't have pushed her away, and I hung up before he could finish. Not out of cruelty, out of self-respect. The next day he tried again. I didn't return the call. I dialed 911 and requested a wellness check at his address. When the police arrived, he was fine, embarrassed, angry. He never tried that tactic again. Here's the twist Brandon never saw coming. I wasn't dating any of his cousins. Never flirted with them. Never crossed a line. Mark actually gay. He'd come out to me privately weeks before trusting me because I listened. Charles happily married. Brandon had forgotten because he never asked about anyone else's life unless it related to him. Evan started dating someone from my running group about a week after he moved here. Brandon never noticed because he was too busy watching my Instagram to see anything that wasn't about him. Brandon projected his guilt onto my friendships because he assumed everyone else's intentions mirrored his own. But intentions reveal character, and he finally had to see his. Meanwhile, my life didn't fall apart after leaving him. It blossomed. I found a small but beautiful one-bedroom apartment with sunlight that poured through the windows each morning. Light I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I kept in touch with his family, who still invited me to events because their connection to me wasn't conditional on him. Gerald invited me over to help restore his old car. Karen sent me new recipes to try. Charles's wife invited me to brunch. Mark's second gallery show was already in the works, and he asked me to help with the promotional planning. They had become a second family, one that valued respect, honesty, and kindness. And for the first time in a long time, I felt appreciated. Not for what I tolerated, but for who I was. I started dating again, too. Someone gentle, someone grounded, someone who thought boundaries were healthy, not controlling. Someone who didn't laugh when I was vulnerable. A man who, when I told him about everything that had happened, looked at me and said, "You didn't ask for too much. You asked for the bare minimum." I believed him. The last update I received about Brandon came from Evan, sent with an apologetic wince emoji. By the way, your ex brought a new girl to family dinner last night. Apparently, she spent the entire evening glued to her phone, texting other men. Brandon confronted her about it. And Gerald said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Well, Brandon, you can't be insecure about it. She can talk to whoever she wants, right?" The table burst into laughter. Except Brandon. Here's the lesson. When someone mocks your boundaries, believe them. They're showing you they're incapable of honoring them. When someone flips your concerns into accusations, believe them. They're showing you they can't love without control. When someone demands freedom but can't handle equality, believe them. They're showing you who they truly are. And if you ever decide to prove your point, do it so honestly, so quietly, so thoroughly, that their entire family sees the truth without you saying a single cruel word. Brandon wanted to talk to whoever he wanted, and he did. In the end, he kept the freedom and lost everyone who mattered. I kept my dignity, my self-respect, and an entire family who valued boundaries the way he never did. Funny how life works out.